Ladies and gentlemen, we've discussed the potential Donald Trump acquisition of Greenland many times in the past few months. I first talked about it back in the summer when I said I think Trump's going to try and buy Greenland. He hinted at it kind of as a joke back in 2019. Well, now it's serious. We know that Trump sent Vance to Greenland. He sent Don Jr. a few months ago. Now he's turning up the heat. You've got Vance in Greenland on the U.S. military base there that was installed back in World War II to protect Greenland from Nazi Germany after the Nazis had taken over Denmark. And Vance basically saying Denmark is not doing a good job protecting Greenland. Donald Trump wants Greenland. He wants Greenland to be part of America. They're trying to do this, not so much double speak, but this kind of, Greenland needs to be controlled by us, but we also want Greenland to have self-determination, to decide for themselves. The question is, how does this advance? And really, when it comes to these public opinion polls, a lot of Americans just don't know the overall value of Greenland and how it would change and really help the United States in the future when it comes to our security and the security overall of North America. We do know that Greenland is within the North American footprint just east of Nunavut, the territory in northern Canada. So this is a North American territory. And it's very important for the United States not just to acquire Greenland for the security, but also the rare earth minerals to keep them away from China and Russia. But you can see based off of this, just 6% of Greenlanders want to join the United States. And if you've watched my videos, I've said that right now, this is not something that's popular for the people of Greenland, because consider the context. They want to be independent. You know how these smaller countries are. They don't want any big country over top controlling them. And so you can understand that they would say, no, the United States, they're big and bad, and Donald Trump, we don't like him. And they're trying to break away from Denmark, but they really can't. I think if Donald Trump had lost, let's just say Kamala Harris wins, this situation would basically be the exact same it's been the past, really since 2009, where they were given the right to self-govern, although they are still technically controlled by Denmark. They don't have a military, things like that, but it would be stuck in the mud. And you'd be talking about Greenland. Well, maybe they decide to potentially break free of Denmark, but at that point, they would have to establish some type of economic relationship to keep their economy afloat, whether that's with the EU or through NATO. It would be something like that, as opposed to what it is now, to where, unfortunately, what we've seen, this is a huge optics problem for the Trump administration when it comes to acquiring Greenland, because, and this is just where we are in 2025, the United States could secure the island within 5 hours and take over Greenland, but that would not play too well when it comes to the EU, when it comes to alienating allies, things like that. So all of these moves kind of have to be done in a diplomatic sense. And so if I was the Trump administration, I think it's very important, and I'm a little, well, I mean, I guess behind closed doors. That's why I said people were saying, well, JD Vance didn't visit with anyone. There were no Greenland officials there. I mean, I'm guessing behind closed doors, there had to have been meetings with somebody within the Greenland government. Otherwise, it would be a completely wasted trip outside of the posturing that we want Greenland and we're serious about it, which is really what Vance was there for. But I also think there were going to be meetings, things like that, propaganda. All of that got canceled. It got canceled because right now the United States is getting trampled in terms of propaganda against the EU. The EU, I mean, Greenland is a proxy to the EU. And so you can see this, 85% of the people of Greenland are opposed to this right now. The problem is we haven't even been given a chance to pitch what we would give the people of Greenland in terms of infrastructure upgrades. A lot of them are very, very poor. The quality of life is extremely bad. They constantly have power outages. They have low quality jobs. All of that is going to be upgraded significantly with a U.S. investment that simply, it's not possible for Denmark to do. They don't have the economic power to be able to get something like that done. And then we also could do a deal with the people of Greenland, kind of like Alaska, to where they have a right to a percentage of mineral extraction. We're going to take the bulk of it because we have to invest on the extraction technology and the infrastructure required to be able to do this along the coasts, but they would get a cut of it. So it just makes so much sense. And the thing is with Greenland, it's so unique to where you have to be able to explain to Americans that it's not like Greenland is independent and Trump's this big bad guy taking over this poor, small country. This is a country that is under Danish control. And so it's not like they're totally independent and they'd be taken over. You would transfer the control from Denmark to the United States. The United States within a North American territory, then we know Russia and China are tampering with it. Now, whether or not you think that's the United States and the Trump administration fear-mongering, I would say there's a little bit of that for sure, but there's also serious interest. We know China has tried to use the Belt and Road. They've tried their proxy investments into infrastructure within Greenland, like buying airports, which were previously military bases that were used by the United States. Now the United States only has one military base in Greenland, but we want the entire island to be able to operate with our military and be able to have control of the Davis Strait, be able to have control of access to the Northwest Passage and things like that. It's very important, as well as overall control of the section of Greenland, which is located within the Arctic Ocean, which is to the north of Greenland. So this is all very important. That's why we want the full island instead of doing some type of economic deal with Greenland. When this first thing broke out, I was like, well, maybe it's just going to be an economic deal between the United States and Greenland. It'd be basically the same thing. But it does look like Trump wants Greenland as what I would consider a legacy thing, because it is different if you do an economic relationship with them. You know, you're not acquiring the island. Trump wants it in U.S. control. So basically it would be Greenland, and they'd be a U.S. territory, rather than Greenland being completely independent with an economic deal with the United States. And it's a legacy thing. But this is a propaganda war when it comes to something like this, because this is where we are in 2025. There is just a lot of negative energy when it comes to acquiring a territory, even with a situation like this. And now you've got people comparing this to the annexation of Crimea, even the invasion by Russia of Ukraine, which is crazy. It's not even close to the same thing. But unfortunately, any type of territorial change, there's all this fear-mongering and there's all this, oh, it's you can't do this. This is the 21st century. You're a Neanderthal, things like that. I mean, this is a North American territory that's in our footprint that's being tampered with Russia and China, and they don't have a military, and the people that own them right now cannot properly defend them. So what do you want us to do exactly? But we have to be able to communicate that to Americans, and the amount of money, and these Americans are like, no, we don't want to do this. We're $37 trillion in debt. If we can get back, I mean, imagine with Greenland in the next 30 or 40 years, it's not going to happen overnight, but this is a potential boom, whatever you acquire it for, 30 billion, 50 billion, 10 billion. I mean, honestly, you could probably acquire it for free, but that would not be done diplomatically, and you would face sanctions from the EU, and it would be a negative story for Trump if he did acquire it via a military exercise. But it would be a military exercise to secure the island. That's all it would be. I mean, listen, I'm not saying Trump is going to do that. If he does end up doing it, there's going to be a lot of pushback. I know there was a report yesterday that said Trump was not opposed to using the military to secure the island. And that's what we would phrase it as. If there is a military exercise, it would just be a military. People say, well, it's a special operation, whatever. It's basically a military exercise to secure the island. That's what I would classify it as. Be like, oh, it's an invasion. Who are we invading? We're not. It's not an invasion. There's no military to deal with. Greenland doesn't have a military. So we would secure the island from our biggest adversaries. That's what it is. But you can see only 30% of Americans want Greenland. A lot of these people don't know. We have to get these numbers up. We do. And honestly, maybe we don't. And we just tell Americans, just, you know, this is something that needs to happen. And it's like, oh, the moon landing. It's like, this is a joke. Like, this dude, it's just Americans don't know the prospects on Greenland and how important it is for global security. And also, oh, if we can make $5 to $10 trillion off of rare earths, and by the way, those rare earths right now that are used for EVs and they're used for smartphone batteries, they're fully controlled or mainly controlled by China. So yeah, if we can get rare earths within Greenland, that's something that we should really look into. This is not a new thing. This is, and if you're Trump, this is something I would push. You push this issue and you pump propaganda. There has to be propaganda pumped in to the American people. There has to be propaganda pumped in to the people of Greenland. But it's like, at this point, we're fighting with both hands tied behind our backs when it comes to Greenland. Let's give Greenland an actual offer and tell these people, this is what we can present to you as a way forward that's going to be significantly better than what Denmark is offering you. Because that's the way you win those people over. And obviously we can offer them, they're like, oh my God, free healthcare. There's 57,000 people on the island. You don't think we could pay for their healthcare or work something out to make it better for them? Look at the GDP comparison between the United States and Denmark. There's seriously people trying to argue that Denmark, that they're better off under Danish control. Really? Like this is a total joke in terms of overall investment power onto this island. And also job creation, and they're like, well, a bunch of Americans are going to move there. The culture of Greenland doesn't change. It would stay the same, especially considering it's disconnected from the lower 48. By the way, if Alberta joined the United States, it would still, I'm sure, feel like Alberta. Well, that's a little bit different because they've got a lot more in terms of population. Alberta does. But still, even Greenland with those people, it's not like you're going to get a ton of migration from the lower 48 to Greenland. And even if you did, you look at Alaska and you look at Hawaii, culturally, especially Hawaii, they're very different than the lower 40, the 48 states. So when it comes to something like this, there has to be better propaganda. Or honestly, if you're Trump, I mean, this is one of those things to where how much does it really affect the administration when it comes to acquiring Greenland? How aggressive do you want to be? Because it's a scale. It's like a tipping scale. You can be aggressive and you can acquire Greenland, but is it worth possibly the negative repercussions in terms of damaged relationships? And I think there's probably already going to be damaged relationships within the EU as it is. By the way, when it comes to Trump leaving NATO, I think, and just knowing how Trump operates, we will be able to use our power within NATO, whether we stay in NATO or leave NATO, by giving ultimatums to countries. In essence, what I think Trump is probably going to do is he's going to draw a line in the sand when it comes to NATO, and it might end up being the EU needs to be on board with us acquiring Greenland or we're going to leave NATO. It might be every country within NATO needs to pay a % of their GDP to the United States as a tax for us to remain in NATO. It might be a deal with Russia to where we will leave NATO if Russia gives us rare earths for free from the Donbass region. There's going to be strategy in terms of if Trump actually, it's not just going to be, I'm going to leave NATO and nothing's going to happen. I think he's going to leverage the United States might to extract either more from NATO countries. But the thing is with these European countries, we're just so detached in terms of we're trying to move away from this liberalism. They're not. Well, you could argue with the Republican or the right-wing parties in the UK now, the Reform, and in Germany, and also in France, even though they've been defeated, they are rising to a degree. And as the immigration continues and the cultures shift more and more of those people are going to be awoken to what's happening to their culture and their country, and they're going to repent against liberalism. But that's going to take time. But it just comes down to when you look at where NATO is right now and where we are, we're just in different places. But the point is here, we have to stress and get this propaganda out to these people on why Greenland, even if Trump did acquire it, it's just what way do you go about acquiring it? Because it seems like this is something that the people of Greenland do not want. And again, we're fighting with both of our hands tied behind our backs. We haven't offered them anything. If we offer them some stuff, those numbers, I think, will change pretty significantly. They should. But again, the problem is a lot of these countries really don't care about what's right or how it can benefit themselves. They hate Trump so much. Whatever Trump wants, they say, let's do the opposite. That's what a lot of this is with these EU countries and with Greenland. And I mean, they're a proxy to the EU and they're getting pumped with information. They welcomed in Don Jr. back in January. Why does J.D. Vance not get the same treatment? Well, they've got a bunch of EU propaganda saying Donald Trump is a fascist and he's going to take over your country and enslave you. That's what it is. And it's like, so why is Don Jr. welcomed in? Why can he go everywhere? Why does he do all these photo ops? But when J.D. Vance goes 2.5 months later, there's nothing that can happen. They don't want him. They deny him. Oh, you don't think they've gotten any propaganda? I mean, come on. Like, the point is you have to communicate to these people why the United States acquiring Greenland, and it's not even, like, people think, oh, they're going to be a state and all this. No, they're not. They wouldn't be a state for years, probably decades, because of their population. So it's just a bunch of fear mongering. That's really what this is. But there has to be proper communications to the American citizens and the people of Greenland that really turns these numbers around. And I think it can happen as long as people know that we could make 5, 10. I mean, who knows how much with all of the inland ice that's melting. Who knows how much money we can make off of Greenland and their rare earths. And by the way, the people of Greenland will also be making money off of it as well if we do a deal with them in terms of mining extraction to where they get a cut. So their industries are going to improve significantly compared to where they are now. It's like, oh, they want to keep their resources. There's nothing to, well, yeah, they're going to keep their resources, all right. They're going to keep them in the ground. They're not going to be able to mine them. They don't have the money. They don't have the people. They don't have the total manpower to perform mining operations or the technology to do it. They want to keep their resources. Their resources are going to be kept, all right. They're going to be kept under glacier ice. They're going to be kept under rock and soil. And so that's why the United States needs to come there and extract them as a way to help both Greenland and the United States. Because Denmark sure isn't going to do it. Denmark's had control of them forever. They haven't done anything. It's only gone the opposite way. Greenland wants to be independent of Denmark, but the point is it's turned into this negativity against the United States, which is not what we wanted. You know, these things, they have to be done preferably diplomatically. Now, if Trump does a military exercise to secure the island, I mean, you know, it's not a big deal, but people are gonna be angry about it. It is what it is. So I don't think we'll be able to, it'll probably blow over. It would blow over, I would imagine. I don't think Trump's going to do that, but you don't really know. Trump seemingly does really want Greenland. This is not some joke. You don't send J.D. Vance there who basically says this needs to happen. Denmark is not doing a good job, calls them out. Now Denmark is angry. You can see the recent headlines here. Denmark hits back at tone. I mean, I don't blame them, honestly, because J.D. Vance did seriously call them out. And it was a clear message to the people of Denmark that, listen, you need to give them up. The question is, do we negotiate with Denmark to buy Greenland, or does Greenland become independent of Denmark and then we negotiate directly with the people of Greenland to acquire them in a diplomatic process instead of some type of military exercise, which is there's no fighting, there's no invasion, they don't have a military. It's a military exercise to secure the island. The only fighting would be from basically the EU fighting the United States because France said they would send troops to Greenland to defend it against the United States, which at that point, you want to fight your biggest friend in terms of the military agreement of NATO. I mean, these European countries are completely in over their heads. But I mean, this is what Trump has to deal with. It's all about propaganda and, oh, they hate Trump, so they don't want Trump to have anything. This makes total sense. I think most liberals would even agree that this makes sense when you lay it out and you understand why the United States owning Greenland would be 100 times not only just better for the people of Greenland, but this is a common sense acquisition. J.D. Vance scolds Denmark during Greenland trip. Trump says U.S. will get Greenland. Military force may not be needed, but will not be. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what it is. Military force may not be needed, but is not ruled out because we want to do this diplomatically. So let's talk to the people of Greenland and let's get them on board with this. But I mean, I think what Trump is realizing is these people are moving extremely slowly. They had their election, and the parties that came in first and second, they want to leave, but they're like, we want to do it in a slow process. Well, let's go. Come on. I mean, this has been like this since 2009. And so the other problem for Greenland is they have to, if they want to go fully independent, they have to do an economic deal with someone. I mean, you would think, unless they want to lose all that revenue they've been getting in subsidies from Denmark. So that's basically the Greenland as a 51st state. It would not be a state. It would not be a state. It doesn't have a population. They would have to apply, unless Trump like expedited them and gave them statehood, if that was like part of the acquisition process to where they demanded being a state. If the people of Greenland demand being a state, I mean, I guess that's something that you would look at. But why would they demand being a state? Their taxes would be significantly better as a territory. It would make sense for them to be a territory, not a state. Look, I'm fine with making Greenland a state 10, 15 years down the line. And I think it'd be a Republican state because of the amount of migration, just like Alaska. You would get a lot of Republican migration. It wouldn't be radically conservative, but it'd probably be 60-40 conservative, like 10, 15 years down the line. Because the people that would tend to move there, a colder climate, it would be more conservative type people. That would be my estimation. But look, if they demand being made a state as part of us acquiring them, then maybe they would get 3 electoral votes. But even still, it's like they don't have the population for it to apply for statehood, I don't believe. And also, that process takes multiple years anyways, unless you fast track it, which I guess if they demanded being a state, then that's something that could happen. The Danish foreign, they're all angry. The Denmark is angry. Denmark should see, listen, let's try and get something for them. Let's sell them. So we can actually get, 30 or 40 billion dollars. I don't know what the cost would be. I'm just throwing numbers out there. And then when it comes to like acquiring Greenland, I mean, as long as it's not an outrageous amount of money. I mean, listen, if it ends up being I don't understand how it would be a ton of money. But if they demand a bunch of money, then there probably will be a military exercise. We're not going to pay you $1 trillion. We're just not, when we could have this for nothing if we wanted to. Like, let's do this. We're going to give you stuff. Let's be nice about it. Let's get the American people on our side. And let's try and turn the dialogue around right now that seemingly is very negative with the people of Greenland, because that's the most important thing when it comes to this acquisition. If you want to do it diplomatically, it has to be done in a way to where the people of Greenland, and really the Greenland officials, because the people follow, if they start saying, well, no, this is a good idea, you're not trying to bribe the Greenland officials, but listen, let's have some closed door meetings with these people is what I'm saying. Let's get them on board. They start saying, well, you know what? The United States acquiring us, they can have little rallies or little town halls in Greenland and say, educate the people of Greenland why this is a good thing. Give the Greenland officials, you don't want to bribe them, give them, but you know what I'm saying. So, let's just get this done. We have more money than these people. We can get it done. It can be diplomatically. We can buy the happiness. Buy the happiness. So that's really what it is. And it doesn't cost much money. There's 57,000 people. It doesn't cost much at all. So, but let's get that going, and then we can turn Greenland against Denmark and against the EU, and then we've got full control once we get the people of Greenland on our side, and it's totally diplomatic. Trump's a peace president. He doesn't want this, and that's how you do it. But there has to be closed-door negotiations. We have to talk to these people and tell them, we're going to lay out the strategy. This is way better than what the EU can offer you, or what Denmark can offer you. Or we just go to Denmark and we say, here's an ultimatum. We're going to invade, or you can get something for them. And honestly, Denmark would probably, because they want Trump to look as bad as possible. These countries, they won't accept a free $20 billion if it's going to make Trump look worse. It's like, well, we can either give you $20 billion or we're going to take Greenland for nothing. And then they'd be like, well, go ahead and take them. We've got the EU. We're going to hit you with sanctions. We're not going to trade with you. How about now they're saying, oh, we're just going to trade with China. You really want to get in bed with China and lose all your jobs? The EU? Okay. Have fun with that. We've been there, done that. But the point of this is that let's do this acquisition in a way to where we get the people on our side first. And that's why I was surprised with Vance going. There should already be the Greenland officials saying, yes, we want this to happen. And you do that through talks, through closed door meetings. Because I don't know if they've just shut the United States out completely, if they're that in bed with the EU to where they won't talk to the US on an acquisition. I mean, I don't know how relations are like, but shouldn't there have been a setup to where you don't want to buy, you just buy these people. I mean, you just buy the officials. Yeah, that's what it comes down. I mean, it doesn't cost much. I mean, it's what has to happen. So, but I'm surprised they didn't do that. And so Vance goes there. It's very hostile. They won't let him visit anywhere. He can only visit the military base. It's just not a good look for the administration. Shouldn't the administration be set up to have better relations when Vance goes and there's a lot of people there, and you start pumping the people with propaganda on why it's better for the United States? Because all they've been saying is about security, security, security. And unfortunately, with these countries, it's the same thing with Canada. Like, look at Canada. Canada pumps their chest. They say, we're Canadians, we're free. Then they get invaded by Russia, and they'll demand United States help immediately. So it's like, okay, yeah, you're real free. Same thing with Greenland. Greenland gets invaded by Putin or by China. They immediately are like, NATO, save me. And like, I understand geographically, you can pump your chest out and say, like, we don't care that we don't have a military because we're not going to be invaded. Just look at where we're located. I understand that. I get that. I do. Same thing with Canada. But it is very annoying when you deal with it, because these countries, if something happened in terms of world destabilization, they would immediately be crying to the United States for help. But we have to sit there, but they can sit there and pump their chest because nothing's happened to them and based off of where they're located. And again, I understand it. You can kind of do that. But again, it's just like the dynamic of if they got invaded, oh, please, United States, we actually love you, land of the free, help us with your military. So what I'm saying is let's get the official, the politicians in Greenland on our side, and then that'll help us with the people of Greenland. But it is a propaganda war. And right now we're being labeled and branded as these fascists who just want to invade places and take them over. Number one, if Trump wanted Greenland really bad, he could have it in 30 minutes. Now, it would cause some turmoil in terms of global powers. By the way, not with Russia. And look, this is something to where it's like we're already having a more stable relationship with Russia, whether people like that or not. Obviously, Trump's already been labeled as a Russian agent or whatever. They tried that whole thing in his first administration, the whole Russiagate stuff. But it's like, if we take over Greenland and there's bad relations with the European countries, I mean, it's already happening. Trump wants this war in Europe to be over. He wants Ukraine and Russia to come to some type of negotiation. Several big-time EU players do not want it to happen. France doesn't want it to happen. Germany is kind of on the fence about it. The UK, obviously they're not in the EU, but the UK and NATO, they don't want it to happen. Or at least we don't. I think all of it's for negotiations. I do, but I mean, there's clearly a rift between the European NATO countries and the United States with Trump in. There's clearly a rift, and so this is just another thing you kind of have to get over. But we have to turn the people of Greenland around into accepting the United States. And this is not something to where, oh, we're just going to take you over and install all of this stuff and make this an American, completely an American territory. It's like they would keep their government if they wanted it. We just want to have access to the rare earths and mine them and extract them and because right now China has majority control over those, and also we want access to the Arctic. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So that's what I would say when it comes to the whole Greenland situation. I mean, right now it's not popular. A lot of people just don't know about it. It's like 30% of Americans want this to happen. I think most people just don't know. And they think, well, Trump's just this fascist who's looking to take over areas. I mean, and then when it comes to Canada, like, it's the biggest joke in the world. The idea that Trump would just take over Canada, it's just not how it would work at all. There would be provinces within Canada, depending on what happens with this upcoming election, that would be, I don't want to say begging to join the United States, but there would be provinces that would probably vote to join the United States. So how is that an invasion of Canada? You know, you could argue that Trump is trying to cripple them through tariffs. But I mean, tariffs have to happen for the United States. We have to start producing more of our own crap. The pandemic taught us that. And so we have to expand our manufacturing. You look at the biggest thing when it comes to global economies, manufacturing overall power. And we don't have that right now, and we're trying to get it. And the only way to get that is to put in tariffs, because you have to force the companies to produce in the United States domestically. That's it. Otherwise, they won't do it because it's cheaper to outsource, because when you talk about less strict labor laws, that's with China. When you're talking about things costing less in Mexico, and by the way, Mexico, they get stuff from China and then they sell it to the United States. That's another thing that happens. That's why Trump put tariffs on them. So the tariffs are a must if we want to produce and bring manufacturing back fully to the United States. You have to do it. Otherwise, there's no incentive. A great example of this is the Biden CHIPS Act, which was supposedly the greatest thing ever because it was going to produce semiconductor chips in the United States. Nobody wanted to invest in it. They passed the bill. It did nothing. There was no investment. Donald Trump threatens tariff. Why would there be any investment into domestic production of semiconductors when it's cheaper to do it in Taiwan? It makes no sense. There's no incentives to do it. So Donald Trump introduced a 25% tariff onto Taiwan, and their massive semiconductor company invests $100 billion. They report like a total of $170 billion in creating and producing chips domestically within the United States. That's how it's done. It's through tariffs. You have to threaten tariffs, or you have to go through with full tariffs. Otherwise, there's not going to be production in the United States. Everything is going to be outsourced. your economy is only as strong as the country's producing whatever your goods end up being. And so when you outsource everything, it becomes a major problem. You're relying on other countries when you have the #1 GDP, but by $10 trillion, and we're focused on outsourcing. It's ridiculous. Let's just get back to this. This needs to happen. And look, the administration needs to do a better job of getting the politicians within Greenland on board. And whether you bribe them or just get them on board, I mean, it's what it is. I mean, this has to happen so then they can get the citizens of Greenland on board, and we can turn the citizens against the EU and against Danish control. And you can kind of manipulate the situation and say, Denmark are the evil ones. We're going to invest so much more money into Greenland, and we're going to give you such better jobs. Denmark and the EU, they're the real bad ones. And so let's just get that propaganda going. But either way, guys, that's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.